Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gaur Gopinath Sam Kund Radha Kund Giridharan ki jai, Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadvip Dham ki jai, Swami Bhaktivinoda ki jai, गंगा माई की जय, जमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Lolita, attractive. Gati, movements. Vilasa, fascinating acts. Valguhasa, sweet smiling. Pranaya, loving. Nirikshana, looking on. Kalpita, mentality. Urumana, highly glorified. Kritamanukritavattya, in the act of copying the movements. Unmadanda, gone mad in ecstasy. Prakritim, characteristics. Agan, underwent. Kila, certainly. Yasya, whose. Gopavadvaha, the cowherd damsels. Translation. Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Sri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Rajadama, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the rasa dance. Purport. By intense ecstasy of loving service, the damsels of Rajabhumi attained the qualitative oneness with the Lord by dancing with him on an equal level, embracing him in nuptial love, smiling at him in joke, and looking at him with a loving attitude. The relation of the Lord with Arjuna is undoubtedly praiseworthy by devotees like Bhishma Deva, but the relationship of the gopis with the Lord is still more praiseworthy because of their still more purified loving service. By the grace of the Lord, Arjuna was fortunate enough to have the fraternal service of the Lord as chariot driver, but the Lord did not award Arjuna with equal strength. The gopis, however, practically became one with the Lord by attainment of equal footing with the Lord. Bhishma's aspiration to remember the gopis is to pray to have their mercy also at the last stage of his life. The Lord is satisfied more when his pure devotees are glorified, and therefore Bhishma Deva has not only glorified the acts of Arjuna, his immediate object of attraction, but also he has remembered the gopis who were endowed with unrivaled opportunities by rendering loving service to the Lord. The gopis' equality with the Lord should never be misunderstood to be like the Sayujya liberation of the impersonalist. The equality is one of perfect ecstasy, where the differential conception is completely eradicated, for the interests of the lover and the beloved become identical.
So, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Ramya Kachi Upasana Bhajavadhu Bhavija Kalpita. And there is no better method of worship than the system invented by the gopis. So gopis' invention of worshipping Krishna was to remain always Krishna conscious without any material profit. That is the super excellence of gopis. They never expected any return from Krishna. That was not their business. Krishna, we have done so much for you. You cannot give me this benediction. No. They will never ask like that. That is the first class worship. Krishna, you take whatever you like from us. But we do not ask anything, neither we have any need This is Gopi punishment. We have got everything to give you, and we have no need to ask you. This is Gopi punishment. Generally, they worship God needy. Artha, artharthi. Artha means diseased. Artharthi means need of money. People generally go to church, temple, when they are suffering from some ailments or need of money. These two classes, another two classes, Jigyasu, Gyani. Gyani means who is after pure knowledge. And Jigyasu means inquisitive. What is the nature of God? They are higher section, but they are not bhaktas. Just like there are many philosophers, they also talk of God, but they are not bhaktas. But because they are talking of God, they are getting some benefit. Just like if you handle with fire, you perceive some warmth automatically. So these four classes of man, they are not bhaktas, devotees. Artha, artharthi, Gyani and Jigyasu. But because they come to Krishna for some benefit, somehow or other they offer their service. Because praying is also another service. There are 9 kinds of services. Savanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasivanam, Archanam, Bandhanam. This is also service. But because this service is rendered for some motive, to mitigate the sufferings, artha, artharthi, or to satisfy some inquiries, they are not pure devotion. So, the gopis' activities, they are the supreme platform of pure devotion. There is no other business. There is no other business. Gopis, they are not interested to know philosophically whether Krishna is God. Although they are seeing every step, Krishna is God. Mother Jashoda is seeing that Krishna is God. Gopis also, Gopijana Vallava, Girivaradhari. Krishna is lifting the Govardhan hill. Who can do it except God? They are seeing it. Still they do not know that Krishna is God. Krishna is wonderful, that's all. They do not like to know whether Krishna is God or not. They want to love Krishna. Krishna may be God or not God. It doesn't matter. Just like if you love somebody, what he is rich man, poor man, educated or non-educated, there is no consideration. Love has no such thing, consideration. Similarly, Gopi's love for Krishna was pure. There was no consideration that Krishna was God, therefore they wanted to dance with him. No. Krishna wanted to dance with them, therefore they came to Krishna. Krishna is now calling by the vibration of his flute, at this dead of night. So, all these young girls, they are all married, some of them are mothers. She immediately left their home. That is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Some of them were cooking, some of them were feeding, breastfeeding the children. Some of them were pleasing the husband or the father. In this way everyone was engaged. But as soon as Krishna's flute was heard at dead of night, they left home immediately. All the guardians, generally in India for young girls, the guardians are the father, the husband, the brother, all male members. They forbid, where are you going? Nobody cares. No love for so-called children, no love for home, no love for brother, father, or no respect, Krishna. That is Gopi super extents. So that is being explained. And Bhishma Dev, at the point of his death, he is relishing. These are to be learned. Unless we are practiced to think of Krishna always, how at the time of death we can think of? Therefore, Kulasekhar says, Krishna tadiya padapankaja panjanantam addaiva vishatu vimha nasaraja hansya prana prayana samaye kapavata pitto kanthavarudhala vidho smaranam kutaste. Maharaj Kulasekhar, king, a great devotee, he is praying to Krishna. Krishna, this is the opportune time. Now I am healthy. I am quite in good health. So let me die immediately, thinking of you. Because my whole purpose is to think of you, of your pastimes, at the time of death. So, generally at the time of death, kapabhata pitto, the whole system becomes disarranged. There are coughing, there are headache, there is some pain. This is general system. Sometimes they are so intolerable that the man who is going to die, he cries. The system within the body is so complicated that at any time it can be disarranged and it becomes a great source of pain. So at the time of death means the arrangement becomes so dangerously painful that one leaves this body no more. This is death. This bodily arrangement becomes so painful. Just like one commits suicide when the situation is too much painful. He wants to rescue by committing suicide. Similarly, when the bodily pains are too severe, then the living entity cannot live in this body. Taptadeham. He gives us this body. So we have to give up this body. That we forget. People have become so misguided. They are memorizing. In our country, some astrologer has said that one big politician, he has become one of the two dogs in Scandinavia. Now here, for this material body, they have erected museum and statues and being worshipped by so many methods. But the spirit soul, which was the politician actually, not his body, he has taken birth as a dog. This is their mistake. Where the politician has gone and what he is doing, they do not know. But they are concerned with the body. My Guru Maharaj used to say, yes, that one man is drowned, another brave man comes, I'll save him. And he jumps over the water and brings the coat and shirt. Now this man is saved. So what people will say, what a nonsense he is. He has brought his coat and shirt, and the man is saved. Similarly, these rascals, they are dealing with the coat and shirt of the living entity, but they have no knowledge in the university or anywhere where the soul has gone. These rascals have no knowledge. They are simply concerned with this external body. Those who are interested only with this external body, not those who are 99.9% population, they are interested in this bodily concept of life. Perhaps we are the only institution in the world which is teaching that you are not this body. This is the wonder of Krishna consciousness movement. We are the only institution throughout the whole world that we are teaching people that, my dear sir, you are not this body. You are different from the body. And after death, you get another body. Tatha dehataram prapti. Simple education in the Bhagavad Gita. They do not understand. There are big, big scholars, rascals, all rascals. Our difficulty is these rascals are going on as scholars. They have no buddhi. Their life is bodily concept of life, and they're passing as scientists, scholars, leaders, politicians, and they're leading us. Andha jathandi, they are blind, and they are leading us. So we have been also put into difficulty. So only this Krishna consciousness movement can save the human civilization and get him raised to the platform of the gopis. We have got such nice thing. These gopis unallied Krishna love. That is what. Thank you very much.
So Hare Krishna, everyone. Can I just request for that verse that Srila Prabhupada's talking about to be on the... Yes, so the verse that they're talking about. And if I could just ask one of you guys to please speak, recite. Not so much recite, but just read the English meaning, please, if I may. So we can remind ourselves where this all started from. Just the translation, please, yeah.
Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Sri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Rajdama, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the rasa dance.
Yeah, please use mic, because then people online,
Hare
they'd
Krishna.
be able to hear it. Thank you.
Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Sri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Rajdama, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the rasa dance. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you,
this is the Srimad Bhagavatam class given by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada in New York on 22nd of May 1973. And here there's talk of gopis, and Srila Prabhupada starts with Lord Chaitanya's statement by saying, Lord Chaitanya said, Ramaya Kanchid Upasana Vrajavadhu Vargena Ya Kalpita. So there is no better method of worship than the system invented by gopis. Yeah, and you've heard in the class, Srila Prabhupada used the word super excellence of gopis. This also featured in purport. Would anyone want to tell me why? What is super excellence of gopis that we all need to try and acquire in our lives? Who had the mic, please? Can we have it for His Grace Srinivas Prabhu? Thank you.
Well, there was a pastime where Krishna had a headache, and Krishna wanted dust of the feet of his devotees. So Narada Muni, he went to different devotees. Yes. They said, we can't give our dust, we'll get contaminated. Then Narada Muni, he went to the Vrindavan, to the gopis, and said, Krishna's got a headache, he wants the dust from your lotus feet. Gopi said, take as much as you want.
Yes.
And then Narada Muni told him, you'll go to hell for that. And they said, we don't mind.
Yeah.
If he's going to please Krishna, we don't mind.
Yeah. So, yes.
Highest level of surrender.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for that pastime. And gopis weren't worried about the repercussions of their actions as long as Krishna had a moment's relief from that headache that I'm sure Krishna didn't have. But yes, so here in the class, it's mentioned by Prabhupada, gopis' intention of worshipping Krishna is to remain Krishna conscious always. Like you said in that story, they're not worried about any profit or loss. Yeah, so they always want to remain Krishna conscious without any material profit. They never want to be, they don't expect anything in return from Krishna. Their mentality is not that of a mentality of a business person that, Lord, I have done so much for you. Can't you even give me this benediction? That's how, well, I think anyway. I recall when my dearest Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami, left this world, I was in blaming with my little buddhi that I have, like, why Krishna? There's so many people. Why couldn't you take anyone else? Maharaj was doing so much for you, so much for humanity. So that's our, like, my thinking at least, you know. So our transactions are like business, like, we've done so much for you. Can't you even do this for me? But this is not how gopis were, because they are in their first class worship. And gopis have an attitude Because gopis' attitude is, then this is where it's substantiated that gopis are saying, Krishna, you can take whatever you want from us. They do not ask. So there's ask, take, and need. Because they're saying, you can ask for anything that we have, you can have. And then they're saying, anyway, we do not need anything. So that's their attitude that we all need to get to on our platform that Srila Prabhu wants us to, because this is what differentiates gopis' worship from our normal level of worship. Then Srila Prabhupada mentioned 4 types of people who come. Anyone want to remind me? Who are these? Please take the mic, because just thinking about online viewers, just in case any. So thank you.
Arto, Adati, Jignasur, and Gnani.
Okay. And what does that mean then? So what are those words meaning?
Adha means the distress, and Adati means like they want something from, like a business transaction, as you said.
Needy for money or poor in that sense.
And Jignasu, inquisitive, like inquisitive.
Yeah.
And Gnani means who has knowledge, some knowledge.
Yeah. And then Srila Prabhupada goes on to, can you just pass mic to Prabhuji there? You, Prabhuji? Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You were talking about, different these people. So could you tell me why Srila Prabhupada explains that these are not bhaktas? Even though Gyanis are actually looking for,
First time I heard, I was fanning Prabhupada at that time, that these are not devotees. I never heard that in my 30 years. So I thought that he said that they are having, reciprocation, like they want something in return. So that was the point made by Srila Prabhupada. And he mentioned each and every one, what is the actual, like how we explained, like Artho, Artharthi, Jigyasur, and Gyani. And he said that they are not devotees.
Yeah.
So that was the one thing which I did not understand.
Okay. Would you want to pass the mic to this Prabhuji in red cap? So Prabhuji, how Srila Prabhupada was talking about how people who come to temple, like all of us, 99.9% of us come to temple because we either have ailments, we got suffering, we need money, or we need power, or we need something, and we want to come here for praying, right? And then he was explaining that the different types, people who want to learn about the nature of God, or people who just want pure knowledge. And that he also mentioned that they may be slightly higher, but they are not bhaktas. And he goes on to explain that they do get some benefit though, because they are doing one thing, which is praying, right? So when we pray, what happens? Then he goes on later on to explain. But he mentioned an analogy that even though they've coming with some sort of material motive, but they still get benefit. Would you want to remind me as to what that analogy was? It's like anyone remember? It's a Prabhuji at the back, he remembers. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. The analogy was like, if anyone is handling fire, then automatically he will get some warmth.
That's right. So even though your intention is not to get warmth, but if you are on and around fire, what happens? Yesterday there was bonfire. We were just taking the parikrama around it, and we could feel the warmth of fire. So similarly, people, even though they are coming in, they're doing the right thing by at least coming to shelter of Lord. Who else are we going to ask from if not from Krishna? But our thinking needs to be on that platform of gopis. So what they're saying is, yes, they will get benefit, because then he goes on to mention about the 9 processes of bhakti. And he says like service, it is also service when people come in to pray. right? So that's the analogy I was after, fire and warmth. Then, even though he goes on to talks about gopis again, that how Yashodama was, even though she's seen Govardhan was lifted, so it must be God, gopis knew, but their overpowering feeling was that of love of Krishna. They did not care. It wasn't the consideration that, oh yeah, he's God, that's the reason I want to go dance with him. So so then there's Srimad Bhagavatam verse 7.5.23 just before, where he's mentioning that one of the 9 processes is also service, although all of those are, but he specifically goes on to mention one. Could somebody remind me of that? Yes. Okay, Vandanam. So yes, he's right. Then he's talking about love again, and how he's talking about pure love. It's not just gopis he was just talking about even love in this world, right? We know Srila Prabhupada's mentioned that a mother's love of child is as close as it comes. But even generally, when you know of people who have fallen in love, they actually do not have any consideration. Is this person is rich, or is this person is poor? They do not have this consideration that maybe this guy is educated to my level, or maybe he isn't. But that's not the consideration. So for gopis, their love for Krishna is pure. And it's pure how? Because they have no consideration in the sense that Krishna is God. They want to dance with Krishna, but not because they want to dance with somebody who is superior and they'll have a name, fame, or anything like that, because Krishna is God. But they get drawn by the vibration of flute, and even though Krishna calls at dead of night, then he goes on to explain that there is young girls, there's married women, there's mothers, there are young women who are cooking or in dead of night feeding children, babies, doing their day-to-day job of cooking for husbands, looking after the house. They have fathers, they have guardians as brothers, and so on. And they are engaged in their services still without any consideration at dead of night when the flute happens. They just get drawn and they give up all consideration to just, that's their love. But one of the ladies, can they explain to me as to what is Srila Prabhupada trying to tell us through this example of, is he saying we should all leave our houses and go wherever? Is that what he's insinuating? Please give to, Mataji, would you like to give it a try? Please. Because we can't simulate. He's not telling us that. But he's talking about how high their love is. But why do you think he's trying to tell us that? What is the main point he's trying to get across to us? That eventually we need to be in love with Krishna for our own, like raising our spirituality. Could you have a guess?
I think maybe it's to put Krishna first. And
that's true, but I'm looking for another answer. Would you like to try? No? Okay. Anyone at the back? Please.
I was thinking the same thing, put Krishna first. He's the important one.
Yeah, that's right as well. Okay, I'm just looking for... I'll talk, because Srila Prabhupada mentioned about the super excellence of Krishna. So what is he saying? He's saying, think about it. As a mother, how difficult is it to leave your child even for a few hours? Those of you who are mothers or parents know that how difficult is it to just leave child for few hours to go to school. Or I know I cried when my son was first time going to a trip for a week and I couldn't eat. One time he was in hospital going through his operation when he was 16, 17, and I could not eat all through the day until I knew he was safe and thing. And when he ate, only then I could eat after hours. So we all have attachments. We all are doing something or the other which is binding us to our homes, our families, our relationship. But Krishna's trying to say, be detached. So we are serving, we keep serving, but at the same time we need to be detached. So I was looking for detachment whilst serving. Shri Radha Gokulanand Bhagwan Ji ki, Shri Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Ji ki, Gora Nitai ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. So that's the bit I was looking for. Okay, could you please give a mic? Sorry, one second.
I remember when Jayapataka Swami came here, and there was a particular Mataji there. He had a stroke and everything, and he wasn't eating, and he was suffering a great deal. And but she stopped eating and couldn't thing. But then, when he heard about this, he says, if you want to help me, if you really want to help me, just go out there and preach. Do what Prabhupada wants. Exactly. This is what... And he was angry about it. And it was then that it gave her another consideration. She had to do what he said. And his was, it's something you can't change. Carry on.
Yes.
You'll please me. And the same with Bhaktivedanta Swami. I remember that, like you said, it had a devastating effect, but you come back for service. It's the only way. That's what he'd want.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He would be ashamed of how I treated and I got in altercation with Krishna, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Prajana Prabhu. Very nice. And moving on to Bhishma, relishing the death. Thank you. Thank you. And what is the learning points from Bhishma? He's talking about at the point of his death, he's saying we need to be practicing thinking of Krishna always. That's the learning I would draw out from it. And he's trying to talk about just the background about this is, we all know this is the verse where Bhishma is trying to concentrate on Krishna, and he's trying to recall how Arjuna is so special that, Krishna is the charioteer for him. And before some of the verses, how Krishna did not hesitate to break his promise to protect his devotee. So how Krishna is putting devotees first, but he realizes that although Arjuna is so special, but more than Arjun is gopis who's even more special. So he's trying to think like to please the Lord, because Lord is pleased when we glorify not only him, but his devotees. So he then goes on to glorify Arjun, then he's glorifying gopis. That's the context and background here. So then Srila Prabhupada's asking a question about how at the time of death we can think of Krishna. Because then the example of King Kulashekara Sen. Govinda Prabhu, would you mind speaking about that verse, that beautiful verse, that Kanta Varodhana Vidhau Smaranam Kutaste? Please say
Krishna Tvadiya.
I think it's 7.
Krishna Tvadiya Parapankshara Panjarantam Ajaiva me Vishatu Manasi Rajahangsa Prana Prayana Samaye Kavavata Vitai Kanta Varodhana Vidhau Smaranam Kutasti. So while my mind is in good condition, may it become entangled in the lotus stems of the feet of the Lord. Because at the time of death, I won't be able to. It'd be very difficult for me to actually think of Krishna because I won't be able to, all the life airs, etc., will be disturbed. So someone is praying for an early death while they're in good consciousness and their mind is fixed on Krishna.
Precisely, that's exactly it. And he mentions about Canto, when our, mouth, neck is going to be full of mucus, all these other things. How are we going to our body is going to be in so much pain. How are we going to be able to remember? And what he wants to do is say to Krishna, why don't you allow me to die right now when I'm healthy? Because who knows what's going to happen at the time of death, because it's meant to be very painful. I think this is from Mukunda Sutra 33, it says, because of the imbalance of Kapha, Pitta and Vata. So purpose is to think of Krishna and his pastimes at the time of death. And look how Bhishma is thinking about gopis and their love for Krishna. So then Srila Prabhupada goes on to talk about how painful it is, how death is a great source of pain, because the arrangement that this body, when it's working perfectly, is great, but as soon as there is imbalance, it becomes very, very painful. And it becomes, he uses the word painful dangerously, and that one feels the need to leave this body. And that's death, because then there's no more. And then he gives example of suicide as well, that of course they find it so painful that they feel the need to leave. And then he mentions about Tvakta Deham, which is the verse 4.9. about giving up body. Would you like to tell me about that verse as well? It's like, I'll recite it.
What is the verse?
It's 4.9.
4.9 is Janma Karma Chame Divyam.
Yes.
Evam yo veti tattvata tyaktva deham punar janma neti mameti so Arjuna.
Yeah. So he's saying, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So basically, if we want to avoid death, painfulness, all these problems, we can give up our soul in such a way, a body in such a way, that we do not need to then be in this cycle of birth, death, and old age and disease. So then he goes on to mention about astrologers. One astrologer who's predicted one of the politicians, he links it back to how, there's museums made. Sorry, David Prabhu wants, I don't know your initiated name, Damodar Prabhu. So.
Thank you, Mataji. Just have a question that Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the class that this is perhaps the only institution that teaches the body is separate from the soul. I was just wondering what he meant by that in terms of a certain context, or because I can name many institutions that would teach is different.
Okay. So we'll come to question and answers in a bit. I just quickly want to finish off Maharaj Srila Prabhupada's class. So basically he talks about how they erect many, many museums for all these renowned politicians and all these people who are rich and famous or famous for something. And yet one of the astrologers has mentioned that a great politician has taken birth in a body of a dog somewhere up in Scandinavia. He doesn't name anything, but all he's trying to open our eyes to the fact that this body, we pray and we think so highly of it, but it can also be in various things. It's the actions, it's the real thing we need to talk about. Then Srila Prabhupada talks about his Guru Maharaj. Who's going to enlighten me about that, please? Someone who hasn't spoken, please? Anyone at the back? He says, my Guru Maharaj used to say, and he gives an analogy. Anyone know? Yes, Prabhuji, who's got the mic, please? What's your name, Prabhuji? Okay, thank you. We're coming to the end of class, so it shouldn't be too long, and then I can answer Prabhuji's question.
Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj gives the analogy of if a man is drowning in a river and if another man goes to rescue him, but then ends up with the coat and shirt and feels very proud that, oh, I've saved him, that's not really rescue.
No. And why is he saying it's not rescue?
Because the analogy refers to saving the body versus the soul, that like if you try saving the body, and the example of the politician, his statue being erected in a museum, that's not really something to celebrate of, because it's the soul that needs to be saved.
Yeah, so basically he's referring to outer garments as external body. So rather than saving soul, people are concentrating on saving just the body. And that's what he's talking about. And it's no fun, because I know one of my acquaintances, they had fire in the house. And the husband went in to save the child who had, because they say smoke kills before fire does. So the little boy didn't realize that we shouldn't go up. He went up to the room upstairs because there was fire in the house downstairs. Mother wasn't home. Father went up, thick smoke. They had some sort of weird ceiling because of that they had. And he went in, fire brigade, by the time they come, he went in, he got himself quite burnt as well to try and save the child. He thought he'd hold the child, and he came out. When he came out, it was just the jacket of the child, and sadly child died. So we can imagine that if we are also doing all these activities, to save somebody's soul is so much more important than just the momentary thing. And in this analogy, Srila Prabhupada's talking about 99.9% people think they are only interested in concept of body. So how, to coming back to your question, like ISKCON is special. Why is this ISKCON special? Because he said it's the only institution who is saying that he's teaching that you are not this body. You are also something different from body, right? We can actually put this into practice, isn't it? When we go to school, when we all went to school when we were young, did anyone ever tell you about you're not this body? I don't certainly recall to the studies when I went to do. Nobody cared. They talked about my feelings, talked about everything else, but not the actual thing that we need to save, right? So this is why Srila Prabhupada's taking this position that we are the only institution, and how beautifully and sweetly he says this, my dear sir, you are different from this body. So his teaching is that you are not this body. And then he goes on in verse 2.13, Tatha dehantar praptir, dehastastra namuyati, how he's explained, those of us, I'm sure we all know this verse, and how the soul passes from childhood, boyhood to youth and old age, and then ultimately in death it passes on to another. So this is how he's explained. And then he goes on to talk about the Hatma Buddhi, that why people are still just blind, leading blind. And he used one words, one words, Andha Yatha Andhe, yes. Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.31. And who was he referring to? He's referring to all these people, politicians, scientists, philosopher, the supposedly very, very intelligent people who cannot understand the simple science of Bhagavad Gita 2.13, that ultimately we are not this body. That's what he's referring to. And then to conclude, it's only the Krishna conscious movement that can save the human civilization, Srila Prabhupada said. And he said, why? Because we can raise everyone to the platform of gopis. He's linking in the class again to start off with that same verse. And it is, we can be assisting in achieving the goal of our life, same as, if we do same as gopis, not do, but actually have that same attitude in terms of loving Krishna and be in his unalloyed love of Krishna. So thank you very much for answering and bearing with me. And Srila Prabhupada ki, Granthraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. So, Prabhuji, you had a question. I don't know if I'm qualified to answer, but I could give it a try now. And those of you who need to go and do their services, please feel free to leave. Yes, Prabhuji.
So in terms of the only institution that teaches we're not the body, we're the soul, like the whole of Islam believes in a distinction between the body and the soul. Many different organizations before ISKCON was actually an institution would teach that distinction.
Okay, so I don't know much about Islam, Prabhuji, so I cannot possibly comment. But all I know is Hinduism is, or this particular, our, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, Lord Krishna, and this Bhagavad Gita was written 5,000 years ago. So think about it. That's when it first started. And how many people are actually going around telling everyone, you're not this body? Because people would laugh, right? I haven't come across any Islamic person that's talked to me about that. I've certainly come across devotees. I work in an institution where I have people from all wakes. Islamic people are very, very religious as well. Don't get me wrong. The guy I work with, he's doing Ramzan. He's very into his prayers. I have a lot of respect for people who are religious, because what is religion ultimately? I know a lot of people, it's not cool to be religious these days, so nobody wants to side with any of the religions in that sense. However, there are people who still take upon themselves to do the right thing. And I personally think religion is teaching you right from wrong. So I don't really know, I can't comment about Islamic thing, but we definitely know our institution, definitely Srila Prabhupada, thanks to Srila Prabhupada, and it's spread so nicely that it's in each and every country talking about you're not this body.
Okay. I know personally I was involved in an institution before ISKCON, that they were around before ISKCON, and they taught that you're the distinction between the body and the soul as well.
Okay, so that's very nice. So it's nice to know that the other people are also thinking about it now, but definitely Srila Prabhupada's words about spreading the whole thing, and think about not just now, you might be an institution just gone now. Srila Prabhupada saying this since 1970s, right? So all these things in my mind just say that it's Srila Prabhupada's institution which is doing real good. So I'm sure you all agree. So thank you so much again. And Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.